Hi, all. Thanks so much for joining Making Healthcare Work for You, Different Perspectives and Empowering Solutions. I'm Stephanie Fields, joined by my co-host, Dr. Apoorv Gupta, and today we welcome David Dibble, who is a creator of 3D Healthcare and also co-founder of a loving organization, Consortium. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I so love what you guys are doing in the world.
I don't even know where to begin because we talked about so many amazing things in the pre-interview that I just can't even begin to think of what's most important or most interesting because it's all equally important, but I don't have like a flow chart. So or a word bubble with all the different things. But I'm going to start with something that you feel strongly about and a stat that I thought really made was a revelation for me. So we talked a lot about whether or not you use the word love or compassion or other things. And I think I definitely feel that we have to go big or go home and use the word love and de-associate it with romance or creepy things. And in this form, love is just truly one human caring about another human at all times throughout their life and or their experience. And I think Apoorv would probably agree with me on that. And David, it seems you do too. So one thing that you said was that 94, according to Demings, 94% of good and bad outcomes or the result of systems, not of people. So it's not bad people, it's bad systems that are causing issues. And if love has been shown to have transformational impacts on healthcare systems and pretty much everything else, and the data is clear on that, then we have to find a way to operationalize love. And so you talked about doing that and ways to start doing that. And then you talked about people as popcorn and ideas as popcorn. So I'd like to hear how you connect all those dots of operationalizing that and getting the benefit of the 94% of those good outcomes and people as popcorn.
Um, yes. Okay. So
No small request, right?
I would start with to create systems change, which I think that's the ultimate goal, is to create systems change and a transformation within those systems from basically fear and control based systems to ones based in love and support. We have to look at two sides of what I would call the systems-based transformational whole. And the two sides are, one side is systems change. And so we know 94% approximately, according to W. Edwards Deming, are a function, the outcomes are a function of the systems and not the people that work in the systems. And so what we see is we've been trained really to see people as the cause of whatever outcomes we get, particularly problems. And so what we try to do is to change behavior of people that are working in systems which are basically producing these outcomes that we want to change. And so we have to look at changing those systems in order to change those outcomes. But equally important is the people side of things. It's 50-50 when we look at systems change. The people are as important as the systems. And what Einstein told us is we can't solve problems with the same thinking used to create them. And so what that says is we've got to work at growing the people. And growing the people, I would say, through loving those people and taking good care of those people as we go through the transformational process on the system side of things. And that's what we try to do when we look at implementing 3D, for instance, or operationalizing a loving system, is to look at working on both sides of the equally important whole, the system side and the people side.
It's interesting to think of people as part of the system, like as something that you are operationalizing in there. That's a unique perspective.
Yeah, David, that's a fascinating way to think about this. Thank you for joining us today and for your ongoing leadership in this area and your guidance and mentorship to me specifically. Really grateful for that. So it's a thrill to have you on this show today. As we're thinking through that, I think maybe it would be helpful to actually think a little bit more deeply about what love actually is. And I think you talked very eloquently about love versus fear, and ultimately everything kind of coming back to that, and also why love is different from other terms that we might use. So maybe that's a good place to start that conversation.
So I'm going to go back to the creation of the human mind. And I know this is going to sound, excuse me, a little esoteric, but this is, kind of, it's actually how it works. If we look at the human mind, what we see is it's made up of thoughts, beliefs, and memories. And those thoughts, beliefs, and memories also always have an emotional component to them. And the emotional component will either be from love or from fear. Those are the two things that basically, exist in the mind, and the emotional components that are created in thoughts, beliefs, and memories will be from either love or fear. Now, if we look at love and we look at the emotions that are created from love, such as compassion, empathy, caring, those types of things, those are emotions, but they are not love. Love is greater than that. And then if we look on the fear side of things, we will see the emotions that come from fear. There's of course fear, but there's also, anger and jealousy and all of those types of things. And those things are also emotional energy that come from fear. And so for us, in looking at doing transformational work, we want to look at transforming the emotions that come from love to the emotions that come from fear as basically partial solutions to systems-based problems. So it's, love is really the greater, part of it. And so we should be talking about love, not about things that come from love, such as emotions.
That's really fascinating. And so when you go into healthcare organizations to help them with whatever their situation is, are you helping with a specific need, or are you trying to transform the entire line of thinking? Because I wonder, do people act resistant to some of this? I'm confident that talking to you, you could turn them around. But does the first half hour, do you have to get them on board to thinking this? Because it's so exciting to think that something, I mean, really, it's like a check-in with yourself. Oh my gosh, well, is this coming from love or fear? It's just a great way to think of, even with parenting, oh my God, well, am I making that decision out of love or fear? It's a great way to do anything. I mean, you've blown my mind. I am a popped popcorn kernel just thinking about that. And we've only been talking for a little bit of time. So what is it like when you're working with these people, and how do you help them realize that something that seemingly basic can help them transform their entire organization?
So one of the things that we know about love is that it only pulls. It's attractive. And so whenever we're doing this work, whether it's a loving organization work or whether it's 3D healthcare work, facilitation of the work always and only uses a pull strategy. So when you walk into a room, if you find yourself pushing or trying to get something across, you have lost your own way if you want to stay aligned with basically taking a loving approach. When we move into, if it's even a discussion, like in the C-suite, for instance, you want to interact with the people in the C-suite in a way that they can understand, that doesn't create more fear, that in some ways becomes more loving. And love only pulls. So what we can do is we can basically interact using love, but also allowing the people that you're interacting with to come along at their own pace. Don't try, I always say to people, don't try to run the universe. We don't run the universe. Just go in and, be who you are and be impeccable with how you are trying to bring love to wherever you are working.
I'm getting ready to ask you something which may be a difficult question. Actually, it's a difficult question for me, so I guess I'm projecting that it might be difficult for you. But let's see what your thoughts
Am
are
I
on this.
hearing fear, Apoorv? This sounds like it's coming from fear.
It's a little setup, a little setup. Just wanting to make sure it's appropriate, for the audience. You talk about love versus fear, and those being the only two really elements that there are. And you talk about the so-called positive emotions of empathy and compassion and gratitude and whatnot, all kind of ultimately arising from love, and therefore love being something deeper than the emotions, really almost being the substrate, or as I like to think of it, the essence of who we are. And you talk about the negative emotions, so to speak, as hate and anger and envy arising from fear. And then fear is the substrate of all of that. So I guess the question that I really have is then what is fear itself? Is fear an emotion? Or is fear something deeper that also represents the essence of us?
Fear at the level of the mind is an illusion. It doesn't exist. Now, fear at the level of the body, that exists, and for good purpose. You learn that, if you fall, you get hurt. And so the fear that we feel at the level of the body, of course, it's good because it keeps us from, jumping off cliffs. But the fear at the level of the mind is basically illusion. We made it up. And that starts very early in life when we human beings can make a connection to the outside world, and we start to create the mind. And the mind is basically the start of the creation of the mind is when our parents primarily start telling us this is good and this is not good, do this, don't do that, these sorts of things. In some bodies of knowledge, it's kind of called the domestication of the people. And then, of course, as we grow older, we go to school and the teachers tell us this is the way it is, this is good, this is bad. And basically what we find is that the mind is created based on reward and punishment. And the problem is that the punishment side of it, the fear of punishment, is basically an illusion that gets programmed into the mind. And it just goes on and on, all the way until we get to a point where either it's transformed or we reach the end of a particular lifetime. So, in Eastern teachings, it's called Maya. And that's really what we're dealing with, is illusion that lives in the mind as fear.
That's really fascinating that you said, it's fear and punishment, and that fear doesn't exist. It's an illusion, because we often talk about how fear and punishment does not work in terms of getting any sort of transformational change done.
Thank you for this incredible conversation, David, and for leading us through a fairly simple, but also it can be kind of complex way to understand what fear is versus love. And I really appreciate your response to the fear aspect being that ultimately it doesn't really exist. We've just manufactured it to some essence from our mind. So I guess my final question to you, David, is what has been your own experience in guiding people through fear versus love? And do you see the ability for that to happen in a large scale way, such as what we're all trying to accomplish now through loving organization, working together and trying to do this at the organizational level? What gives you hope that something like this is possible to help bring out people's love to the extent that it can really overcome the great fear-based systems that have become embedded within our organizations?
I think the humanity is evolving to a tipping point whereby we are being called upon to raise our consciousness from win-lose, fear-based, survival, scarcity mindsets to what has always been true, which is that we are all connected. And so even, the game that we might call win-lose doesn't exist. as part of the whole, there's only one game. There actually are only two games. There's win-win and lose-lose. And we have been playing a win-lose game that is not sustainable. And so we're now, I think, starting to evolve to the point where people are realizing that we've got to expand. We've got to expand our consciousness to begin to care about the whole, about each other, about the planet, about those sorts of things, including each other in the workplace. And that really normally the amount of change that takes place at the level of the mind is proportional to the emotional experience. That's why almost all of the great changes that take place in we humans is defined by the mind as crisis. And so, but we can also create the same amount of change with the emotional energy that comes from love. And so I think that's what's happening now. There are literally, I mean, I used to feel like I was on this journey alone. I do not feel that way anymore. I feel like there are many of us that are now coming together to do this good work in the world, and that we are going to be supported, I think, by the universe in general in seeing this transformation take place for humanity.
Thank you so much for being here, David. This was an amazing conversation.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like I've said a lot and maybe not said, I hope I haven't said too much.
I think it was just perfect too. It's a very deep topic, and it will require multiple levels of kind of going through it. But I think for setting the stage, you've done a wonderful job, David. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you guys so much. Love you.
And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.